Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are stripping the safety labels off of philosophy. We're tackling a book that I think it's fair to say has sparked more heated dinner table debates, more dorm room arguments, and, well, more political vitriol than perhaps any other non-religious text of the 20th century.
That is putting it mildly.
We're looking at a collection of essays that challenges, and I mean really aggressively challenges, almost everything we've been taught about right and wrong since kindergarten.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
This is a book that demands you check your cultural assumptions at the door. I mean, if you go into this looking for confirmation of standard morality or just a comforting pat on the back for being a nice person, you're going to be very uncomfortable very quickly.
We are talking about Ayn Rand's The Virtue of Selfishness. And I have to be honest, just looking at that title, it feels like a slap in the face.
It's designed to.
The Virtue of Selfishness. In almost every context in our lives, selfishness is an insult. It's the ultimate character flaw. It's what you call a toddler who won't share their toys. It implies you're narcissistic, evil, or at the very least, just unpleasant to be around. If I call you selfish, them's fighting words.
And that reaction is exactly what Rand calculated. She wasn't trying to be subtle. She knew that title was a provocation. But her argument, and this is really the reason we're diving into this today, is that we've been conditioned to react that way because our entire moral vocabulary has been, in her view, corrupted.
So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack why she believes selfishness is not just okay and not just tolerable, but is actually a moral necessity for survival.
A moral necessity. That's the key phrase. It's not a luxury or a vice you're allowed to have. It's a requirement.
That's a massive claim. It flips the script entirely. I mean, usually we think morality is about restraining yourself, about not being selfish. She's saying the complete opposite.
She is. So just to orient everyone, our main sources here are directly from the book itself. We're focusing on the introduction, the really seminal first chapter titled The Objectivist Ethics, which is by Rand.
Right, that's the foundational piece.
It is. And then we're also looking at a crucial second essay, chapter 2, which is by her associate at the time, Nathaniel Branden. It's called Mental Health versus Mysticism and Self-Sacrifice.
And that one gets into the psychology of it all, what these ideas do to your brain.
Exactly. We're going to try to strip away the reputation, the caricatures, the fanboys and the haters, and just look at the arguments on the page.
Yeah.
Because whether you love her or you hate her, Rand is a systematic thinker.
Oh, for sure. Her philosophy, which she calls Objectivism, is incredibly structured. It's like a skyscraper. You can't really understand the penthouse view, her politics, or her views on capitalism without understanding the foundation.
You have to start on the ground floor. And for her, the ground floor is metaphysics and ethics.
Yeah.
So where do we start?
Okay, so let's start where she starts, which is right at the front door. The word itself, selfishness. Why fight for the specific word? It honestly seems like a branding nightmare.
It does.
Why not just say rational self-interest or individualism or, personal agency? Why try to redeem a word that 99% of the English-speaking world equates with being a jerk?
Because she believes that by surrendering the word selfishness, we're surrendering the very concept of a self-respecting human being. In the introduction, she argues that popular usage has created what she calls a package deal around the word.
A package deal. Okay.
And this is a really, really important concept to grasp, to understand where she's coming from. It's a term she uses for a logical fallacy, where you bundle two unrelated or even contradictory concepts together and treat them as one.
So you can't accept one without the other.
Right. You're forced to swallow the whole thing.
Okay, so break that down for us. What's in the selfishness package?
Sure. Think about how most people define selfishness in practice. It usually combines two completely contradictory ideas into one messy bundle. On one hand, you have the literal dictionary definition, concerned with one's own interests.
Right. Neutral.
Yeah.
Factual.
It's a neutral, factual description. If I eat lunch because I'm hungry, I'm acting in my own interest.
If I study for a test to get a good grade, that's for me. If I sleep because I'm tired, that's for me. There's no moral judgment there.
Exactly. That's item A in the package. But then, lumped in with that, you have item B. The word selfish also conjures up this very specific image of a murderous brute.
Right. The guy who tramples over corpses to get what he wants.
The person who stabs you in the back for a momentary whim. The predator who steals the milk money from orphans. A villain.
So when I say he's selfish, I almost always mean he hurt someone else to help himself. I don't just mean he ate lunch.
Exactly. And Rand says this is a devastating intellectual trick. By lumping those two things together, legitimate concern for your own life and the act of hurting others, the morality she calls altruism forces you into a false choice.
A binary.
A false binary. The package deal implies that if you care about your own interests, which is item A, you must be that brute, item B. Therefore, the logic goes, if you don't want to be a brute, you must surrender your own interests. You must sacrifice yourself.
It forces you to choose between being a predator or a victim. Those are the only two options on the menu. You either eat or you get eaten.
Precisely. And Rand is trying to take a pair of scissors and cut the string on that package. She is saying, I want the definition of concern with one's own interests back, but I'm throwing away the brute part. The two don't belong together.
And she points out that the dictionary definition itself is missing something.
It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you what those interests are, and it certainly doesn't tell you how to achieve them. The popular usage acts as if concern with one's interests automatically means robbing a bank or cheating on your taxes.
So she's arguing that the brute, the guy who robs the bank or cheats his business partner, isn't actually acting in his own self-interest. That seems counterintuitive. I mean, if he gets the money, isn't that in his interest?
She would argue he is the least selfish person in the room, in a rational sense. We'll get into the why of that later when we talk about reason. But basically, her argument is that living like a hunted animal, fearing the police, destroying your reputation, and alienating everyone who trusts you, is fundamentally not in your long-term self-interest, even if you have a pile of cash for a little while.
It's a short-term gain for a long-term catastrophe.
Exactly. But more importantly, for this part of the argument, she identifies this brute image as a straw man. It's a caricature created by the ethics of altruism to scare people into obedience, to make you think that your only choices are self-sacrifice or predatory evil.
Okay, we need to define altruism here too, because I feel like that's another word where the popular definition might differ from hers. We usually think altruism just means being nice or helping people or charity.
Right, and Rand is extremely precise about definitions. She's a stickler for exact meaning. And in this context, she defines altruism strictly by its philosophical root. Alter, meaning other.
So otherism.
Yes. Altruism, for her, is the ethical doctrine that states that any action taken for the benefit of others is good, and any action taken for one's own benefit is evil. Under altruism, the beneficiary of the action is what determines its moral value, not the action itself.
So it's not about what you do, it's about who gets the result.
Exactly. If you benefit, the action is morally suspect, or just plain bad. If someone else benefits from your action, it's good. She says this creates a moral double standard that's impossible to live by.
Which leads to that really stark comparison she makes in the text. She compares an industrialist to a gangster.
It's a striking comparison, and it really highlights her point. She says that under the altruist morality, people often view an industrialist who makes a fortune producing useful goods, say, someone who invents a new life-saving drug or builds a logistics network that feeds millions, and a gangster who robs a bank as being moral equivalents.
Okay, how? Because that sounds insane on the surface. One is creating value, the other is stealing it.
Because in the eyes of altruism, they both sought wealth for their own benefit. The motive was selfish. And since the motive was self, the altruist judges them both as immoral. The fact that one produced value and the other looted it is a secondary detail to the altruist. The primary sin was the selfish motivation to get rich.
That is a very sharp diagnostic. But surely most people see a practical difference between a CEO and a bank robber.
They do, practically, of course.
Yeah.
But Rand argues that, philosophically, they don't have the tools to explain why one is good and one is bad if their only standard of good is, did you do it for someone else?
So if the CEO says, I did this to get rich and build an empire for myself, the altruist has to say, well, that's greedy and bad.
Right. And if the robber says, I did this to get rich, the altruist says, that's also greedy and bad. The moral condemnation is the same, even if the legal one isn't. Rand wants to break that equivalence and provide a moral framework that celebrates the producer and condemns the looter.
And this all feeds back into what she calls the Nietzschean egoist fallacy.
Right. Because people are trapped in this binary. They think the only alternative to self-sacrificing altruism is to be that brute, that monster. The Nietzschean egoist is the idea that selfishness means just doing whatever you feel like at any given moment.
Whims. I want it, so I take it. Might makes right.
Precisely. And she explicitly rejects that. That's just the brute in a philosopher's costume.
But some people hear selfishness and that's what they think of. They think, okay, if I'm not an altruist, I must be a predator.
And Rand argues that the predator is just as irrational as the altruist. They are two sides of the same counterfeit coin. The altruist thinks, I must sacrifice myself for others. The predator thinks, I must sacrifice others for myself.
Both are based on sacrifice. Both involve a victim. It's just a question of who's bleeding.
Exactly. And Rand is proposing a third option, the true alternative. A relationship where no one is sacrificed. She describes it as a self-respecting, self-supporting man who supports his life by his own effort and neither sacrifices himself nor others. That is the new concept of selfishness she is offering.
It sounds appealing, a world without victims. But to get there, she has to build this moral code from the ground up. She doesn't just say, it's nice to be selfish. She tries to prove it is a biological necessity.
She goes really deep.
She goes all the way down to the nature of life itself. And this brings us to Chapter 1, the Objectivist Ethics.
This is the absolute core of the book. Before she even asks what values a man should have, should I value money, courage, charity, she asks a much more fundamental question. Why does man need values at all?
This part of the text was fascinating to me because most ethical systems kind of start with an assumption. You know, God said so, or society needs this to function, or it's a categorical imperative. She doesn't do that. She asks, where does the concept of good and evil even come from in the universe?
And she starts with a thought experiment to isolate the variable. The one I think you're referring to is the immortal robot.
The immortal robot. I loved this. It's so clear.
It's a brilliant tool for getting to the root of the issue. She asks us to imagine an indestructible robot. It can move, it can act, it has some sort of processor, but it cannot be destroyed, it cannot be damaged, it will exist forever unchanged.
So nothing can hurt it. It's Superman without the kryptonite. It can't run out of battery, it can't rust, it's just there.
Correct. And Rand asks a very simple question. Can this robot have any values? Can it have a goal? Can anything be good or bad for it?
Well, if nothing can hurt it, and it can't die, does it matter what it does? If it drives off a cliff or sits in a field for 1,000,000 years, the outcome for it is the same. It continues to exist.
Exactly. Nothing is for it or against it. Nothing is a benefit or a threat. If it puts its hand in a blast furnace, it doesn't burn. If it jumps off a cliff, it doesn't break. If it sits still, it doesn't starve. It has no interest because it faces no alternative.
It has no skin in the game, literally.
The alternative of existence or non-existence is the fundamental condition that makes values possible and necessary. Because the robot faces no risk of death, it has no need for life-sustaining actions. Therefore, the concept of value is impossible to it.
It can't prefer one state over another.
Right. It can't say, this is better for me, because better implies better for achieving some goal, and its only goal existence is already guaranteed.
So values are born out of the possibility of death. That's a heavy concept. We only care about things, we only value things because we can lose them, and ultimately because we can lose our lives.
That is the anchor of her entire philosophy. For Rand, life is the only phenomenon in the universe that is an end in itself. It is a process of self-sustaining and self-generated action. If you stop that action, the life goes out of existence.
So her conclusion is that the concept of value depends entirely on the concept of life.
Yes, only living organisms can have values because only living organisms face the constant alternative of existence or non-existence.
It is only the concept of life that makes the concept of value possible. That's the quote. So for anything living, a microbe, a tree, a cat, a human, the ultimate value, the standard by which all other values are judged, is its own life.
Correct. The standard of value is the organism's life. That which furthers its life is the good. That which threatens it is the evil.
Okay, so let's walk up the ladder of life here to see how this applies. That's pretty straightforward for something like a plant.
Very.
It needs water and sunlight. If it gets them, that's good for it. If I pour acid on its roots, that's evil for it. It acts automatically to survive.
Right. A plant doesn't have to decide to grow towards the sun. It just does. It has a built-in biological code of action. It can't commit suicide. It can only be killed by external forces or a lack of resources.
Okay, then you move up to animals. They also act automatically, but at a higher level of complexity.
Yes, their survival mechanism is their faculty of sensation and perception. They have a pleasure-pain mechanism. Pain is a biological signal. Warning, stop. This is bad for your life.
Like putting your paw on a hot stove.
And pleasure is the opposite signal. Continue. This is good for your life. Eating when you're hungry, for instance. A cat doesn't have to study nutrition to know it needs to hunt a mouse. It's hardwired. Its values are automatic. It chases the mouse because its nature dictates that this action will sustain its life.
But then we get to humans, and this is where she draws a very, very hard line. we aren't just, slightly smarter apes in her view. We are something fundamentally different because of how our consciousness works.
This is what she calls the spark plug distinction. Plants and animals function automatically. Their code of survival is built in. It's physiological or perceptual. Man, she argues, has no automatic code of survival.
Wait, hold on a minute. I have instincts. I have an instinct to eat when I'm hungry. If you throw a ball at my face, I duck. That feels pretty automatic.
You have physical reflexes, yes. And you have the sensation of hunger. But does your instinct tell you how to satisfy that hunger if there's no food right in front of you? Does it tell you how to plant wheat or how to build a net to catch fish? Does it tell you which berries in the forest are poisonous and which are safe? Does it tell you how to build a shelter that won't collapse or how to, design a microchip?
No, obviously not. I have to learn all of that. I have to be taught or figure it out.
And more importantly, you have to choose to learn it. This is the spark plug. Rand argues that man's consciousness is volitional. You have to choose to think. It is not automatic.
The choice to focus.
Yes. She describes the mind as a machine, but your will, your volition, is the spark plug. At any given moment, you can choose to focus your mind, to be fully aware of reality, to think actively, or you can choose to drift.
To drift. That's a scary concept when you really think about it, the idea of just letting your mind go blurry.
It is. She describes it as a semi-conscious daze, to just react to whatever stimulus happens to cross your path, to let your mind go out of focus and just hope things work out. And Rand says that choice, to think or not to think, is the fundamental choice that determines everything else.
It's like a new version of Hamlet, to think or not to think.
And for Rand, that choice is the metaphysical equivalent of to live or not to live. Because for a human being, thinking is our primary method of survival. We don't have sharp claws, we don't have thick fur, we aren't particularly fast.
We're pretty pathetic physically compared to a lot of animals.
Right. If you just dropped a human in the jungle without their mind, without the accumulated knowledge of how to make tools or find food or build shelter, they would die very quickly. We survive by using reason.
And what is her definition of reason?
Reason is the faculty that identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses. It's how we move from I see a round red thing to the concept of apple, and from there to agriculture and nutrition.
It's how we form concepts.
It's how we gain conceptual knowledge, abstract thought, and that's how humans survive. Farming, medicine, engineering, language, it's all the product of reason.
So if I stop thinking, if I just drift and act on a whim, or if I try to rely on a gut feeling or a mystical revelation, I'm essentially disarming myself.
You are acting like what she calls a suicidal animal. You are rejecting your specific means of survival. You are trying to survive by luck or by mooching off the thinking of others who did choose to focus. And this brings us to her definition of good and evil for human beings.
Which is not just about a beating heart.
No, it's not just about biological survival in the sense of a coma patient. It is man's survival qua man.
Qua man. Okay, that's a Latin term. It means in the capacity of or as.
Right. It doesn't just mean surviving. It means surviving as a human being is meant to survive. Surviving by the method proper to a rational being. Reason. Not surviving as a mindless brute or a parasite or a slave.
So good is that which supports the life of a rational being.
And evil is that which negates, opposes, or destroys it.
This connects back perfectly to the anti-looter idea from earlier. A looter who survives by stealing isn't surviving qua man. He's trying to survive by the method of a parasite or a predator.
Exactly. He's trying to survive like an animal by preying on others, rather than like a human by producing. And Rand's argument is that because we are not animals, that method ultimately leads to destruction. It's not sustainable.
A parasite needs a host, but a producer doesn't need a parasite.
Right. Eventually, the looter runs out of victims, or the victims fight back, or the looter just loses the capacity to deal with reality because he's been faking it for so long.
Okay, so we've established that life is the standard and reason is our survival tool. Now, Rand moves from this biological foundation into a specific code of ethics, the Objectivist ethics. And she structures this around 3 cardinal values and 3 corresponding virtues.
And it's really helpful to keep those terms distinct in your mind as she defines them. A value is what you act to gain or keep. A virtue is the action, the method you take to gain it.
Value is the what? Virtue is the how.
You got it.
Okay. Let's walk through the 3 pairs. The first one, not surprisingly, starts with the mind.
Value number 1, reason. And the corresponding virtue is rationality.
This seems to be the big one. She calls it the basic virtue.
It is. It's the source from which all the others flow. Rationality, as a virtue, means the recognition and acceptance of reason as your only source of knowledge, your only judge of values, and your only guide to action.
Only is a very strong word there. So no gut feelings, no revelation, no, I just feel it in my heart.
No mysticism of any kind. That is a huge part of this. Rationality means a total commitment to a state of full conscious awareness. It means you never fake reality. You never permit yourself contradictions. You never say, I know the facts say X, but I'm going to pretend it's Y because it feels better.
And this is where she brings in concepts like honesty and integrity, but in a very particular way.
Right. It's not about social rules. She talks about honesty not as, I won't tell a lie because it's naughty or because society says so.
So it's not about what you say to other people.
Not primarily. For Rand, honesty is the refusal to fake reality. It's first and foremost about not lying to yourself. It's about not blinding yourself to the facts of the world. If you lie to yourself about the nature of reality, say, you pretend you can spend more money than you earn, or you pretend that a bad investment will magically turn good, you are cutting the wire of your survival mechanism.
We're driving blind.
You are. And reality doesn't care if your eyes are closed, it's still there. She says reality is an absolute. You can ignore it, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring it.
And integrity.
Integrity is loyalty to one's rational convictions and action. It means you practice what you preach. You don't sacrifice what you know is true just to please others or to fit in. Because again, others can't keep you alive. Only your own grasp of reality can. If you sell out your mind to be popular, you've essentially sold out your means of survival.
Okay, so that's reason and rationality. Let's move to the second pair. Value. Purpose. Virtue, productiveness.
This is where we get into the meaning of life stuff. Rand says that productive work is the central purpose of a rational man's life.
Now, I can hear listeners getting worried. Does this mean we all have to be workaholics, just, grinding away at the office 80 hours a week? Is there no room for leisure or fun?
That's a very common misunderstanding. It's not about the number of hours you clock. It's about the orientation of your life. Productiveness means keeping your mind focused on the goal of creating value. It's the process of sustaining your life by reshaping matter to serve your purpose.
So it's the difference between what animals do and what humans do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She says it's the difference between adjusting nature to yourself, which is what humans do, versus adjusting yourself to nature, which is what animals do. An animal finds a cave. A human builds a skyscraper.
So whether I'm an architect designing a building or a chef creating a new recipe or a programmer writing code, I am taking raw material, physical or intellectual, and using my mind to create value.
Exactly. And that act of creation is what integrates your life, gives you a hierarchy of values, it tells you what's important from what's not. Without a central productive purpose, a man's life is just a series of random, disconnected moments.
He's just reacting to stimuli.
He's just drifting. Should I go here? Should I do that? There's no standard for his choices. Productive work anchors you in reality. It gives you a true north. It's the practical expression of your rationality.
It's the difference between driving towards a destination and just driving around in circles until you run out of gas.
That's a perfect analogy. And Rand sees a deep spiritual quality in work. It's the proof of your competence. It's you, in action, saying to the universe, I can deal with you. I can sustain myself.
Okay. And the third pair. This is the one that might trip people up the most, given our cultural background. Value, self-esteem, and the virtue.
Pride.
Yes, pride. Usually listed as the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins. The Bible warns against it constantly. But Rand turns that on its head and calls it moral ambitiousness. That's a really cool phrase, moral ambitiousness. It sounds active and earned.
It is both of those things. It means earning the right to hold yourself as your own highest value. It's not a given, it's an achievement. It's about building a character that is worth loving and respecting.
So it's not just unearned arrogance. It's not walking around thinking you're better than everyone else just because you exist.
No, absolutely not. She would call that vanity or boastfulness, which she'd see as a sign of low self-esteem, not high.
Yeah.
Objectivist pride is earned. It's the result of looking in the mirror and knowing I am a competent, moral person. I have not faked reality. I have been productive. I have lived by my code.
It's the refusal to accept unearned guilt.
That is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Rand despised the idea that you were born sinful or that you are guilty for things you didn't do or for the fact that you exist and are successful.
Things like original sin or collective guilt.
Exactly. She rejects all of that as a poison. You are responsible for your own choices and your own character. If you make good, rational choices, you should be proud of the result. Pride is the emotional reward of achieving your own moral perfection.
Moral perfection. I mean, she sets the bar pretty high. That sounds impossible for a normal person.
She does set it high.
Yeah.
But she also defines what she means by it. For her, moral perfection isn't being infallible or never making a mistake. It's the unbreached commitment to rationality. It means never failing to practice the virtues one knows to be rational.
So it's about consistency.
It's about consistency. It means never accepting irrational virtues or unearned guilt. Never saying, I'll just cheat a little bit today, or I'll fake reality this one time. It means being integrated.
So we have a person who is rational, productive, and proud. They are focused on their own life. They are a selfish person in the Randian sense of the word, but they don't live on a desert island. They live around other people. And this is usually where the accusations of selfishness as evil really come in. How does this rational egoist treat other people? Does he just step on them to get ahead?
And this brings us to the next section of her ethics, the traitor principle. This is the social ethics of objectivism, and it is the direct answer to the brute accusation we talked about at the beginning.
Okay.
Rand asks, how should rational, selfish individuals deal with one another? And her answer is, as traitors.
The traitor. Value for value.
Exactly. A traitor is a man who earns what he gets and does not give or take the undeserved. He doesn't come to you with a sob story,
Right.
expecting you with a gun to take your wallet.
Right. That's looting. He treats you as an independent equal. He says, I have value to offer a product, a service, an idea. You have value to offer. Let's make a trade where we both benefit.
It's voluntary. That's the absolute key. It has to be. A trade is only a trade if both sides say yes freely, based on their own judgment. And she applies this principle to everything. Business, sure. Buying a car, getting a job. But she also applies it to the spiritual realm, to friendship and love.
Love. That feels unromantic. I'll trade you 3 hugs for 1 dinner. It sounds very transactional.
Well, it is transactional, but not in a crude commercial sense. Rand insists it is a spiritual trade. Think about it. Do you want someone to love you for no reason at all? Do you want to be loved selflessly?
No. I want them to love me for me. Because I'm funny or smart or kind or whatever.
Exactly. You want them to love your virtues, your character, your personality. That is the payment you offer. You offer your virtues, and in exchange, you get the selfish pleasure of their love, respect, and companionship. Rand defines love as a payment given in exchange for the personal, selfish pleasure which one man derives from the virtues of another.
So selfless love, in her view, would be what? Loving someone who is awful. Loving a stranger you've never met just as much as your own child.
Yes. Loving a stranger or a villain just as much as you love your own spouse. Rand would call that a moral absurdity and a betrayal of your own values. She says, to love is to value. If you claim to value everything and everyone equally, you actually value nothing. To love is a deeply selfish act, in the best sense of that word.
It's saying, this person is important to my happiness, my life is better with them in it.
Yes, I need them. And that's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of valuing them.
That actually makes a lot of sense. If my partner told me, I love you, but just so you know, I get absolutely no personal happiness out of it. I'm just doing it as a charity case because I'm so noble and selfless. I'd be horrified.
Exactly. You want them to be selfish enough to need you. You want to be a source of their joy. You want to be of value to them. That's the trade.
So this brings up another topic, happiness. Where does happiness fit into all this? Is the goal just to be happy?
This is a really subtle but important point in her ethics. She defines happiness as the state of non-contradictory joy. It's the emotional state that proceeds from the achievement of your values.
So it's a result.
It's the purpose of ethics, but it is not the standard. This is her critique of hedonism.
Hedonism being the idea that whatever makes me feel good is the good.
Right. If it feels good, do it. Rand says that's a fallacy. It's putting the cart before the horse. Your emotions are not tools of cognition. They are automatic responses to your value judgments. They are outputs, not inputs.
So if my values are irrational, then the things that make me happy could actually be destroying me.
Precisely. If you're a drug addict, getting a fix makes you happy for a moment, but it's destroying your life. If you're a sadist, hurting people might give you pleasure, but you're acting as a monster. The hedonist has no standard to judge whether his pleasures are life-affirming or life-destroying.
But for Rand, the standard is clear. Man's life qua man.
Yes. So you don't pursue happiness directly. You pursue rational values, and happiness is the reward. It's the proof that you're living correctly.
Okay, so social interaction is trade. We trade value for value. But what happens when the trade breaks down? What about the bad actors, the people who won't trade, the criminals, or dare I say it, the government?
This is where the political principle of objectivism comes in, and it flows directly from the ethics. The basic principle is, no man may initiate physical force against others.
Initiate is the key word there, isn't it?
It's the most important word in that sentence. You can use force in retaliation, in self-defense. If someone attacks you, you have a right to fight back. You have a right to your life. But you cannot start the violence.
Why is that the ultimate evil in her system?
Because force paralyzes the mind. You cannot reason with a man who is holding a gun to your head. You can only comply. And since the mind, reason, is our means of survival, the initiation of force is the ultimate anti-life, anti-mind, anti-human act. It negates your humanity.
And this is her justification for a government, right? The government isn't there to give us free stuff or manage the economy or build roads.
No. The government's only moral purpose, in her view, is to protect individual rights by placing the retaliatory use of force under objective control. Meaning, a police force to protect us from criminals, a military to protect us from foreign invaders, and a court system to settle disputes based on objective law. That's it. Its job is to protect us from the initiation of force.
So anything beyond that, redistributing wealth, regulating business, telling you what you can eat or what you must believe, Rand sees as the government becoming the very thing it's supposed to protect you from.
She sees it as the government becoming the looter, the initiator of force.
Which explains her staunch and very famous defense of laissez-faire capitalism.
For her, it's the only moral social system because it's the only system based on voluntary trade and the prohibition of initiated force. In pure capitalism, no one can force you to buy a product, take a job, or fund their project. It's all based on trade, on mutual consent to mutual advantage.
Okay, so we've built this massive ethical system. We've got the robot, the virtues, the trader principle, the role of government. But the book has this other critical piece, the second essay by Nathaniel Branden, about what happens inside your head.
Right, chapter 2. Mental health versus mysticism and self-sacrifice.
And I think this is so crucial because it answers the question, okay, so what? What does following the wrong moral code altruism actually do to your brain?
This is a crucial addition because it bridges the philosophy to psychology. It makes it practical. Branden starts by defining mental health. And for him, mental health is essentially competence.
Competence at what? At your job?
At math. Competence to live. A healthy mind is one that is effective, one that gives a man a fundamental sense of control over reality. And the hallmark of this health, its psychological expression, is self-esteem.
We're back to self-esteem.
Yes, but Branden gives it a very precise two-part definition. He says it is the conviction that one is, 1, competent to think, and 2, worthy of living.
So I can figure things out, and I deserve to be happy.
It's that deep-seated belief. I can deal with the world. I am fit for reality. I have a right to be here.
And he identifies two major enemies of this state, two philosophical ideas that he believes systematically wreck mental health and create neurosis.
The first is mysticism, or its most common form, faith. He calls faith a short circuit of the mind.
A short circuit, that's a really vivid image, like blowing a fuse in your brain.
Think about the machine metaphor again. The mind works by processing evidence from reality through logic. I see fire, I know fire burns, therefore I shouldn't touch it. A leads to B. Faith, he argues, demands that you accept B without A, or even in defiance of A.
Don't believe your lying eyes. Believe because it is absurd, those kinds of ideas.
Exactly, and Branden argues that this demand forces a person to distrust their own mind. If you are taught to accept that your senses and your logic can be trumped by a feeling or a revelation or the word of an authority figure, you are inducing a blocked or evading consciousness. You are teaching yourself that your primary tool for survival, your reason, is flawed, untrustworthy, or even evil.
And that would lead to a deep, fundamental anxiety. I can't trust my own judgment.
It creates a state of metaphysical terror. You feel like a leaf in the wind, totally helpless, because you've been told your only means of guidance is invalid.
Okay, so that's the first enemy, faith, and the second.
The doctrine of self-sacrifice. Altruism.
Right.
Branden says altruism puts a person in an impossible psychological double bind. It teaches you that good equals sacrifice. So, if you are happy and successful and achieving your values, you are by definition bad or selfish. If you are miserable, suffering, and giving up your values for others, only then are you being good.
So you can't win. There's no way to be both good and happy.
You can't. It sets up an irresolvable conflict. If you pursue your own happiness, you are slammed with guilt. Why do I have so much when others have so little? I'm a bad person for enjoying my life.
Yeah.
But if you actually try to practice perfect self-sacrifice, you feel deep resentment. Why do I have to give up everything I care about? It creates a fundamental split in your soul.
You spend your life apologizing for your own existence.
Apologizing for being successful, for being happy. Branda identifies this as the source of so much modern neurosis, cynicism, and guilt. We are trying to follow a moral code that is, in his view, literally anti-life, and then we wonder why we feel anxious and depressed.
So for him, mental health requires a morality that is for you, not against you. A morality where the good is your health, your success, your happiness. He wants to integrate your mind and your values, not set them at war with each other.
Precisely. A healthy mind requires a rational ethics.
Okay, wow. So bringing it all together, this is a massive, comprehensive system. We have the intro where we reclaim the word selfishness. We have the biology of the immortal robot that shows we need values to live. We have the virtues of rationality, productiveness, and pride. We have the traitor principle for social interaction. And we have the psychology of self-esteem versus the neurosis of sacrifice.
That is a complete integrated system, which is why you can't just pick and choose parts of it. It's not just be greedy. It's live by reason from the ground up.
And the so what here. Why does this matter today? Why should a listener in 2026 care about a book from the 1960s?
Well, the argument presented in the source material is that the world is in a constant state of crisis, moral and political, precisely because we are clinging to the ethics of altruism. We are told to punish the productive, to reward the non-productive. We are teaching people to be ashamed of their success and to feel guilty for their own happiness.
Rand writes about the gray, debilitating pall of an incomprehensible duty, that feeling that we're all just, serving time, that we owe our lives to the collective, to society, to others.
And her proposed solution is nothing less than a moral revolution. She isn't asking for a political change first. She's asking for an ethical one, an individual one. She wants individuals to assert their moral right to exist for their own sake.
Not just the permission to exist, but their right to exist.
The right to live for your own sake, to be the hero of your own story, not a sacrificial animal in someone else's.
It's a radical shift in perspective. It takes the person who feels guilty for wanting a career, or for wanting to keep the money they earn, or for wanting to pursue their own happiness, and it tells them, stop feeling guilty. That pursuit is your moral purpose.
As long as you are rational. As long as you are a producer, not a looter. That is the constant, crucial caveat. It's not a license for brutality. It's a mandate for rationality.
I want to close with a quote that's not in this specific book, but is from her novel, Atlas Shrugged. It's from the character John Galt, and I think it sums up the emotional pitch of this whole philosophy. Rand writes, through him, "You have been using fear as your weapon and have been bringing death to man as his punishment for rejecting your morality. We offer him life as his reward."
We offer him life. That is the ultimate promise of the virtue of selfishness. It's a philosophy for living here on Earth.
It's certainly something to chew on. And whether you end up agreeing with her or violently disagreeing, you can't deny that she forces you to define your terms. She forces you to check your own premises. So the question for you to think about is this. If you could strip away all the social stigma of that one word, selfishness, is the pursuit of your own rational, productive happiness the most moral goal you could have? Or is there something truly noble and necessary in sacrifice that Rand is completely missing?
That is the question every listener has to answer for themselves.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the controversial world of Ayn Rand. We'll see you on the next one.